Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today we're examining how the profile of a career marketer changes depending on their company's size. Let's get to today's show. If you take the United States economy as a bellwether, you can break businesses down into three categories. There are startup companies, typically have an annual revenue anywhere from $1 million to about $40 million. There are mid-market or scale-up companies that generally have an annual revenue of $300 to $400 million. And then there's large enterprise, like the Fortune 500, where average revenue in 2022 was $36 billion. There are very few of them, but they represent the vast majority of all businesses' revenues. The point is that these companies are such different sizes from each other that you must tailor the marketing you do according to where you are on this continuum. Ideally, you'll take on the difficult task of reinventing the marketing function at each stage of their startup to scale up to enterprise journey. Our guest draws on 20 plus years of experience in creating digital marketing and product development strategies. As a fractional CMO and the owner of an agency called Engagement Marketing, she has supported organizations and businesses at all stages. She also serves as a marketing consultant to founders through Accelerator and Incubator programs. Let's join this talk with Shannon Clement. So glad to welcome Shannon Clement. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Glenn. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm really glad to have you because we're going to delve into a topic that we haven't taken on before. Of course, we've done a lot of different marketing talks, and we've heard from people like yourself who do fractional CMO work. But today we're going to try and uncover when the right time for a certain kind of marketing is. And I'm doing this with you because you've had experience working with companies at all different stages of growth. So I'll start by asking you, when you think of companies that are growing, do you tend to imagine that they're simply moving from the minimum viable size that any marketing function should have and simply just getting larger, but basically going from that miniature version to just a blown up version? Or do you see companies moving through distinct stages where different things are called for at different times?
I would say the latter, distinct stages, but every company is different. And the way that they are structured, the timeline of their growth, the approach that they take from a resourcing perspective, from a product perspective, whether they're bootstrapped, if they have funding, if they've gone through, say, an incubator or an accelerator, or they're doing it on them all themselves. It's really unique to the company. So different stages, different times for different folks.
Yeah. And you've mentioned things like incubators, accelerators, and even at startup mode. I mean, that would argue for marketing being involved at a company really towards the earliest inception of that company. So if that's true, what does marketing even look like at that stage before you have, let's say, real customers and revenue? What do you think marketing needs to do at that ground floor level?
Those are the best kinds of companies to work for as a marketer. The ones that really understand how powerful marketing is from the onset, thinking about how you want your product to show up for your customers, what your minimum your minimum viable product, the value proposition that it has, how it helps people. Um, I think a lot of times founders often think that marketing comes after the product is built, so it's this timeline where you get your product team together, you create your product, you have some really great technology that you think is going to help people, but you haven't quite figured out how it's going to help people or who exactly it's going to help. But if you start from the who and the how at the beginning, which is more of a marketing mind, and you nail down what that unique value is that you have, um, what your market is, how you're going to compete in that market, and really think about all those things right from the beginning. And then also think about 5, 10 years from now. Do you want to sell the company? Are you looking to get investment? At what stage would you like to get that investment? What does that trajectory look like? It's a lot of pre-planning and forward
Mhm.
thinking. But if you can think about those business type of objectives and those marketing objectives right off the top, then you're setting yourself up for success in the future. Because to be honest, you don't even need a product at first to get into the market and start getting feedback on what that product could achieve. You can start creating your list. You can start advertising to that audience that you've decided is your target audience. um, and with all of that information, that can actually inform the product lifecycle and how that product is built, because you're building it for the customers right off the top. You're not waiting until, oh, okay, we created this and now we're trying to force fit the
Mm.
technology into something that is usable for the customer.
A fully baked product in search of a market. Yeah, that sounds awful, right? That would be
Well,
like baking a cake without knowing who is going to eat it.
exactly. Yeah. Knowing what you want right from the beginning is key. But
Yeah,
honestly, most companies don't follow that principle. So
right.
it's few and far between that do. And especially for software companies and more technical type of companies, they're all about their tech. And a lot of times the founder is very technical,
Yes.
so they're really excited about the technology and what it can do, and then they're thinking about, okay, well, who is it for? How do I market it? What does that path look like? And so on. So
Yeah, and I hear some dangerous assumptions could be made at that time, and we would, you know, be pretty deflated if we found out that they turned out to be wrong. So I agree with you that at that early stage, although it may seem like, as you said, you're pre-planning, you're getting in really early with marketing. That is the time when the product is most malleable, and marketing should be able, in very concrete ways, to identify and solidify a market, or at least a solution set that thing can fit. So yeah, that's a really
because you're
good way.
testing you're really marketing the concept and you're testing it. So it's not even at that minimum viable product
Right.
stage. It's pre product, and then using that information, and then when you get to the minimum viable product stage, because you have all of this customer information that will help you develop that product, um, that can really accelerate the growth from that product stage onward.
Hmm.
So it
Right.
can be a little slower at first, But then because you have all your ducks in a row to market to that audience, it can be maybe a faster process. I mean, it all depends on the company and the structure and everything, but
Sure, sure, but it
in a
does
perfect,
take maybe we would say some visionary perspective to be able to see out that far and to say, yes, I'm willing to go slower at the beginning to make sure I'm moving in the right direction.
exactly.
So let's say that we've kind of got some of those proto customers or prospects available. It's good to talk to prospects at any time, but uh, are there certain things that you think marketing should try to get out of those early conversations that will have payoffs in a later stage?
Really understanding the need, how um, not how important it is, but there's all sorts of aspects of when people need things at different stages, and how, and sometimes it's not even, they're self-identifying what that need is.
Hmm.
You might have to look into some market research, which is meant to uncover that need, um, because maybe you have access to, so I'm using the software example. um, Say you want to be a software as a service company, you have an idea, and a technology that can support that idea. You are talking to a few customers, so you have a bit of an idea on what that need is in the marketplace. It's not fully fleshed out, but you've got the basis there. Then once you reach out to those more of those customers, whether it be a phone call or a survey, or doing more widespread market research, then you can start going through these prompting questions, like these market research questions that are going to uncover what the thing is that they really don't like about a process, or maybe it's something that is like a gap, with the way that they do things. But the key is really to identify the gap, plus how painful is it for them.
Right.
Because if it's not painful enough and they're able to use other things to address that gap, then you don't have a leg to stand on. It really has to be enough of a pain point for the customer to either stop what they're doing. Maybe they're using spreadsheets, maybe they're using another tool, maybe they're not using anything and they're using a intern to fill that gap, which, like you have to look at the cost. Um, for that audience. But yeah, I think getting to how painful that pain point is the key to understanding whether it has a leg to stand on in the market.
I think that last point you made was super important. Um, we're talking in a B2B context here, and the best way I know of to quantify that pain is to dollarize it. And, I've witnessed times where they've said, okay, well, here are the many steps we go through. Some of them, yeah, involve labor, some of them are other software license costs, and they run through it all. And you tally that up for them. And many times it's only at that moment that they appreciate the magnitude of how costly and how time consuming all of this is. And if you have a way of compressing those steps, reducing that cost for them, now, of course, you're talking, right?
Yeah. And it is as simple as you have to think in the customer perspective and put yourself in their shoes, because they're on a budget. they are looking at all the different ways to solve issues. And if they can get an intern to solve the issue that you're proposing with your software, or there's a cheaper, maybe it'll take a little longer, it might not be as seamless, it can't integrate with this and that, but that's the way that people think. They're not just looking at your product and then comparing it to the exact competition that you've decided are your competitors. They're looking at all of the ways that they can solve that problem, not just
Right.
that little silo that you've kind of decided that's your niche, and these are your competitors. It's like, no, those
Right.
aren't just your competitors.
No.
There are a lot of different solutions to solve that problem.
Sure, sure. And some far-flung substitutes. And as you say, you need to take that in and help understand, no matter how convoluted it is, how they've decided they can currently fix that problem. You have to then go back to your internal teams, I've found, and work with them to provide a way for the person to see that what you make is going to take care of those many steps, replace them. And the one I think of, and I know it's cliche, but is how Steve Jobs explained the iPhone. And he started by talking about the iPod with 1,000 songs in your pocket. And then he said, and there's a communications device. And he named us several things. And then he said, these are not multiple products. I am talking just about one product here. But he didn't just hold up an iPhone out of the blue and say, here this thing is, because people wouldn't have had the framework to understand what it's replacing
Yeah.
if he hadn't have gone through in tedious detail how it would replace each and every one of those existing products.
Well, and that's what great marketing does, right? It uncovers what those pain points are, and then it shows you in context how this product will solve that issue emotionally, how that will make you feel, how much better your life will be. All this time that you have saved, all, like, maybe it's a status thing, maybe it's a streamlining things. There could be all sorts of different benefits, but if the customer doesn't connect with those benefits emotionally and from a logical perspective, like, you kind of need the both, right? You can't just have one or the other. The emotional perspective is key, because once you get that kind of connection where they see, oh, like, this is gonna make me feel like I'm a leader, like I'm a great project manager, like I'm a, whatever the outcome is for them personally, you almost have to connect on that level.
Sure. Let's imagine that, we've now got something where at least an appreciable number of people are saying, yes, this does fix my problems. I've been beta testing it with you. We have seen true return on investment from it. That's great. What do you think a marketer can do to try and find all the available audiences out there? How do we tap into, let's say, different size companies and understand where our sweet spot is? How do we find different industry verticals and understand where we should and shouldn't play? Or lastly, where within those different companies would we find someone who would be our champion? Do you have any advice for us on those?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you would start like looking at the most widespread audience first, and then go niche. So you look at your total addressable market, And then within that total addressable market, because you know that, okay, here are all the people that can benefit from my product. These are the industries. These are the industries within the industries. These are the personas, whether it's a manager or a, SVP or a founder or whoever. I'm talking B2B, obviously.
Yep.
But once you identify the who and the what, so what industry and who within that industry, um, then it's in doing that competitive research, who's in that space, who's dominating that space, what is the potential there, and if you can go even more niche, but it's a slippery slope, right? Like the more niche you go, the less market you have. But if you're trying to dominate in one area and you see that your product has some kind of feature or benefit that will be specific to that niche
Yep.
and really help that niche, then it might be worth it for you to niche down that much. But you kind of have to see what the options are and make sure that it's not too few people where it's, okay, well, there's 10 people in that market and
Right.
those are the people that I'm going to be selling to.
We have the
Well,
killer app for 10 people.
yeah. So it's got to be like a minimum. And, you need to figure that out. But I would say start wide and then start niching down as much as you can.
Sweet. I want to talk a little bit about some of the different stakeholders within a company that we need to make sure are on board with this marketing that we're doing. But before we do that, we're going to take a really quick break. Do you have a lot of company data in Reach, but struggle to get useful business insights out of it? Do you open up your Google Analytics but find you're at a loss on how to get it reporting the way you want? Do you wonder what new marketing strategies you could leverage if you could just unlock what's in your data? If you said yes, then you sound just like other clients did when they started working with me. Many B2B companies who I've done project work with have been helped by modernizing their analytics. Some deploy dashboards, some activate their data using machine learning in their campaigns. As of this recording in fall of 2023, my schedule is opened up enough to accommodate one or two projects. Should you be ready to begin a project, let's talk about what you would like your analytics to do for you. Please reach out today via the podcast feedback channels or connect with me, Hey Glenn S, 2 N's on Glenn, on either Twitter or Instagram. Or search up Marketing Analytics People on LinkedIn. I'm usually the first Glenn that pops up. Okay, let's get back to the show. All right, Shannon, you've alluded before that we may be doing this or working with a company that is fully bootstrapped, but you also said there may be times where there's venture capital involved or some other form of investors. Of course, the founding team is invested, whether it be in dollars or in blood, sweat, and tears. Marketing has several different masters that we have to look at there. And there are times where the interests of an investor may require trade offs with the interests of, let's say, what we as the lead marketing person want to do, or that we and our comrades in sales want to do. Do you have any advice for how we balance those different needs? There are going to be times where somebody's going to say, I want to hear us hit this number because it's tied to a milestone for our next tranche of investment. Any thoughts on how we navigate this?
I have some thoughts, but I will start with the fact that I have never got investment myself from my own company, and I am not an investor. So this is just me from the outside working with various companies that have gone through this process
Yeah.
and just seeing what approach they take, and sort of some of the pitfalls and positives that they've incurred. But I would say in finding your ideal investors is not the easiest thing to do. You really have to be picky, and you have to make sure that your needs align with the investor's needs, um, because there could be investors out there that give you the money that you are looking for to, say, grow your marketing team, or invest in the company more with DevOps or something like that. But if that investor, say, wants too much of your company, like they're
Hmm.
looking at a really large percentage, um, and you do the math, and you kind of feel like, well, in the long term, that's not a great solution for you. You can't just think short term. You have to think, okay, years from now, this person has invested in my company, and now I'm stuck with paying them a certain percentage. That's, you know, y- Working with some outside, I've seen some founders work with outside consultants on that. And I think that's super helpful. I'm not one of those consultants, but I've seen other consultants that specialize in helping investors go through different rounds of investments, and who to talk to, and things to think about, and pricing and all that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm not the expert, but I have a bit
No,
of an.
nor am I. But the same thing with that outside observation. I think the time horizon that you mentioned is really critical. But let's also superimpose over that the business climate. So here we are in 2023, and I've been hearing about companies that, when, let's say, in the latter half of the pandemic, when certain technologies were getting very well funded, um, there were, you know, situations where investors would bring, Brinks trucks worth of cash to a company, expecting that this would presage a higher round, in the next couple of quarters, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half. Those companies, I'm hearing now, are going to down rounds because the marketing spend was ramped up, and now it looks like they're going to need more runway because the business climate is not the same that it was a year and a half ago. So now they're just basically looking for something to get them by, which of course means that we're on reduced marketing budgets. We're having to temper the amount of output, right? The number of leads and pipeline that's estimated to come from those marketing activities. So it's a bumpy ride. And I think we just have to understand. I think it would be very frustrating to be a marketer moving through these stages without being cognizant that there is this outside force interacting with what we're doing on a monthly or quarterly basis. And it certainly will impact us. There's no question.
And these are the things that marketers have to deal with, right? Like we can be really excited about having a budget, and all the things that we can do with that budget, but the really good marketers know how to do a lot with not much. And it can always be an out where the person says, well, I didn't have any budget, so I couldn't get the things done that I wanted to get done. And that's fine, but you got to manage expectations and understand the business climate, and think like the founder does, because if you put yourself in that person, whether it's a team or it's one person, if you put yourself in their shoes and really understand the business part of it, then you can quickly understand the budget limitations, right? So it's about maximizing all of those marketing assets and your approach, and changing things on the fly when you have to, you know.
Yes.
Um, Maybe not changing your entire direction, but you're changing the plan so that maybe it's a little slower to get there, but you're still going towards those goals, and you're not deviating too much, you're just tweaking things.
Yeah. Managing up is the phrase that I would label what you've just talked about. It's crucial. And especially when it comes to setting KPIs, um, even knowing which KPIs are the right ones. You've mentioned earlier that if we take, let's say, a technical founder, that they will want to set something like estimated revenue or closed revenue as a KPI. Marketing doesn't have control necessarily all the way towards that number, so we need to educate them on which other KPIs we might want to use as a leading indicator, ones that we have some control over. Are there any other KPIs that you like to think we can help the leadership team use to hold us accountable, but also that give them a better sense of what we're actually accomplishing?
From a business perspective, I like to look at things like um, your monthly recurring revenue, your annual revenue. If it's a SaaS company, it's monthly recurring revenue. If you are just any company, um, looking at those metrics of conversions to, so like when I think about a funnel and a marketing funnel, I'm looking at, okay, what am I investing in? What are the, is it Google ads? Is it Facebook ads? Is it social media marketing? Is it SEO? There's all these different channels that you can use to drive awareness or drive leads. Um, and you got to know that that investment is giving you an ROI. So, and that's the biggest thing that I find with my clients is they're, how do I know if I'm getting an ROI on this spend? What are the KPIs that are going to tell me that this is something that is working? And I have some reports that I use in Google Analytics. I've used reports in HubSpot that show that funnel, and you attach a number to, say, like booking a demo. So you have so many demos that are booked a month. How many of those turn into an actual client over time? How long is that client with us? So understanding the length of those contracts, and how much you're making per client. um, all of those types of things are some of the metrics that my clients are working looking for.
Fantastic. Yeah, measuring the estimated worth of a client, uh, understanding that maybe not everyone in your funnel is going to become a client, but you can at least do some reverse engineering with the math to get an approximate of what a segment or even an individual prospect could represent in terms of revenue. That's a great one because then you
Well,
can
and
put
I
it up
try and look
against
at
cost.
it. Yeah, I try and segment the audience, because sometimes you can have different audiences. I'm working with one client right now, and they have three different audiences that they're looking to help on their site. And we're creating reporting for all three of those audiences so that the team can make improvements on the site and then within the marketing plan to ensure that they're having the best experience possible with the product. So it's helping with the product development. It's helping with just tweaking small little things on the site. But the segmentation, I think, is key by audience, because each audience interacts differently and they have different outcomes and things that they're trying to achieve.
Do you think that there's a right and a wrong time for some of those channels that you mentioned? So let's take the example, you're building something that is relatively unknown. Um, Perhaps, if you went into Google Trends and you notice that almost nobody's searching for what you are now making because they don't know it exists, uh, perhaps that suggests Google Ads is not the right channel at this point for that kind of product. You may have to seed the market and build awareness through some other channels first.
Exactly. And a lot of times it's not like Google ads or Facebook ads or those types of things where you're trying to appeal to someone who is looking for a particular solution. If they're at the solution stage, they're way further along and they're closer to convert. So that's a lot easier. But if you're new to the market and you're looking to own that market, you have to do a lot of research on, maybe it's Reddit. That's a great community to do some market research and see what people are talking about and some of the pain points they have, and understanding how you can build a solution to address those pain points. Um, so I would say like forums, just going out there and having conversations and reading about, what people are talking about, because then you'll get a sense of the trend from using specific keywords that people keep using over and over again to
Right,
describe their problem.
right.
So if you can describe their problem enough, to provide a solution, then you can start with maybe some SEO, or even some outbound stuff, email.
Love that. What you did not say was just get what the founding team uses as their favorite description for the problem. That they're the last people that you should get to give you those words. Um, Shannon, you have answered all of my questions and you have just rolled with every single thing. It's clear that you have a sense of how companies that are moving through, you know, current industries can grow and thrive in them. Let's end with a curveball. We have AI now on our doorstep, and it's disrupting old categories, arguably even creating whole new ones. So this means that there isn't a manual around for how we can grow our marketing in some of those cases. Um, the partner, Anderson Horowitz, Ben Horowitz, has been known to say the hard thing about hard things is that there's no formula for dealing with them. So I'll ask you, when there's no formula to even know what the stages are that we're going to be moving through, because we're in completely uncharted territory, what do you use as at least something you can grab hold of to give you a starting point for knowing what to do?
I think some people think of AI as a category unto itself, but I actually see it as part of a solution, to help a buyer with whatever their um, issue is. Like if they have a challenge that they're trying to overcome, and your product has some different features, and AI is one of those features, then that's part of your product, but it's not all of your product. It's a feature, or it's a way that you provide information. But because there are so many AI companies now that are, and I don't even want to call them AI companies because they're companies that use AI.
Yeah.
There's a difference, right? Like,
Yes.
you're a company that's providing a service for investors. You're a company that's in real estate. You're a company that's in construction. You're in all these different niches, and the tool that you have could have AI in it. But that's just one part of the tool that is helping your user solve their issue or
Right.
their challenge, I should say.
Yeah, I've heard
Um,
it likened to like electricity. What company doesn't use electricity? What company doesn't
yeah,
use, telecommunications? Being able to speak and interact with each other over distance. Like, yes, it's just going to become infused in everything.
and I've read a lot about AI and how it's progressed through the years, and how, I think it was in the early 2000s, everyone was talking about AI. And, if investors heard that your product had AI, it was, oh yeah, we got to get on board with that product. And they're, next generation, they're doing all these cool things. But then they saw that it just wasn't taking off. Like, there was a real hesitation from
Right.
the market, to adopt that technology. And then it kind of got pushed to the side. And if you were using AI, you didn't talk about the fact that you were using AI. It was part of your product, that did cool things, but you're not saying that word AI because people are freaked out when they hear that. But now it's kind of back, like it's
Hmm.
cyclical. And now when you say AI, investors are getting excited again, and it's going in that direction. Um, but I honestly feel like it's just going to be part of the product, just like it was back in 20 or back in 2000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
yeah,
stay grounded. Yeah.
yeah, I think if a company thinks that way and they're looking at AI as part of their framework or part of their platform that helps them do their job better, great. But it's not all bets hedged on AI.
Yeah, yeah, we do have to watch. We are the ones who create captivating ideas, who do positioning, and if we allow ourselves to become enamored with the hype, then that might be doing a disservice to our product. Like you say, when it is in almost every different product, it stops being so amazing, right? It just becomes ordinary. And so we have to
And
watch
some
ourselves.
companies and some companies are using it better than others, right?
Right.
Like, just because you are using AI doesn't mean that your product is better. It,
Yep.
some companies are using AI very well and it's benefiting the end user, but other companies are not using it in a way that is going to help that customer any more than, if like, it might actually even hinder their experience because they're so overwhelmed with all of the information. So if you're not packaging all of that AI information and then disseminating it in a way that is really helpful to your customer, then you're not really using it properly.
Hmm. Yeah. You're not keeping the customer at the center of your plans. So, Shannon, when people are interested in hearing more from you about the way that you can help their companies, where would you like them to go look?
I have a website called engagementmarketing.ca. And on that site, I have some information about my company and the fact that I offer a fractional CMO service. So I am the fractional CMO for my company, Engagement Marketing. And In some cases, I use outside resources to help when I'm with a client at an engagement, whether it's an outside SEO service or PPC or whatever that channel is that they might need to leverage. But I'm sort of a one-woman show, working with clients directly now, and I work mostly with software companies. And recently in the space industry, which has been really exciting. Um, and I worked in defense as well, on the technology side. So I like to say that I'm the person that can take your tech to the masses and decipher it for them so that they understand what you do in plain English.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Glenn, for having me. Appreciate it.
I know that people came away with at least one thing that they can do to get better insight into their funnel and make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.